internet, and you heard this mentioned earlier, was another general purpose tool that came along. And like the internet, AI is this very amorphous term, right? What does exactly AI mean? Well, it depends on what industry you're going to use it in. How are you going to use that tool? And so the challenge for Congress and for the California legislature and everybody else is figuring out how do you come up with a set of rules that guide the behavior, that set the norms, the social norms that we want to get an outcome. And like the internet, I think everybody needs to keep in mind, and this was mentioned earlier, that you can have great inequality because a lot of what you can do with AI depends on your inputs. It depends on your access to infrastructure. It depends on your access to data pools. And so that inequality that exists today can also be either exacerbated or taken down. And that's going to be another area that Congress will be looking at. Just like when the internet came out, right? People were very focused on what you could do with it, the software, and what they overlooked was that the big established players in the infrastructure space, the telecom companies, the cable companies, the people that actually put out the facilities that you needed to make the internet work, quickly figured out that as long as they said, I'm an internet provider and not a telecom carrier, not a cable company, that they could get out of regulation too. And the problem with that is that we then lost sight of the basic reason that the internet was there, which is we wanted a better telecom infrastructure. We wanted that underlying facility to make it all possible. So what have we spent much of the last 20 years doing? Trying to close that, quote, digital divide, which is a infrastructure divide. And so one of the challenges with AI is how do you prevent that from happening again? Well, guess who owns the big data pools? It's the same big companies. Now those companies all are trying to do the best in their interests. And the challenge for the startups is, hey, how do you get recognized and how do you align yourself or educate the regulators when there's something different between your interests and the big company's interests? So these are all challenges that people are going to have to face. The one good thing I would say is, look, we've been through these revolutions before. It's new, it's novel, and people are going to say nobody's seen this ever before. But trust me, if you go back through history, we've been through numerous industrial revolutions, the information revolution, all of these things, and we've somehow managed to muddle through. And I think the point that was made, that what you want to be careful with AI is that it doesn't get rid of that innovation. It doesn't overlook the serendipity of people coming together. And the key point I would make as somebody who's been both on the Hill and in the executive branch is that the struggle for the regulator is figuring out how do I motivate this behavior, and what they're going to end up doing is looking at liability. And part of that liability regime is what everybody who's in this space has to think about. Because at the end of the day, when somebody gets hurt, we're going to go to the courts, and the courts are going to have to wrestle with this, and the courts are going to basically apply the traditional laws that they've applied for literally hundreds and hundreds of years, and they're going to, at the end of the day, say, you're responsible. The question is, who is you? And it may be the AI developer, it may be the middleman, it may be the person who decided to use it. But as you go through this, depending on how you're using that tool, think about your liability, think about what you need to do to address that liability, because when it gets into court, people are going to say, what did you do? Did you ignore this risk? Did you think about it? Did you take reasonable steps? Those are going to be the questions they ask. And then when you get to the regulation side, that's what Congress or the government will do. They'll assign that liability to somebody. And that's where the regulation will come in, and it could be light touch, or it could be heavy touch, and it could be right on, or it could be right off. But the only way Congress has a good chance of getting it right, and same thing, don't forget, it's not just Congress, it's the agency that then is tasked with implementing the broader language that Congress wrote, is if the community comes together and doesn't hide stuff from them, but actually goes and educates them. You have to tell them what is actually going on Can't just be, oh, it's mystical, it's magical, it's off in the internet space or it's off in the AI space. You have to come forward and try to work with them to solve that problem, because that's how you'll get the social norms put into place so that people do the behavior that you're hoping they're going to do. Like I said, my closing words are, we've been down this road before. Let's just avoid the mistakes of the past and try to do it better this time. Thank you.
Fantastic.